Hi, this is Preetika Rao. Welcome to my Astrology Podcast, World Predictions 2025. And Maneeza Ahuja ji is right here with me in the studios finally.
Thank you, Preetika, for inviting me over.
My pleasure as always. 2025 is one year which is highly anticipated by a lot of astrologers because of the three major planetary transits of Saturn and Jupiter and Rahu Ketu. And then, of course, from 29th March 2025, we have 5 planets, all of them, entering Pisces. So, a lot of, anticipation, and astrologers are talking about some kind of global, tsunamis or unrest or tension happening for the world, especially for politicians and, rulers, leaders of the world. They are expected to have some kind of problem or backlash or threat, and then of course economy, world economy. So all of that, let's hear it from you. What do you see? What do you perceive for 2025 globally?
Atichari, or the fast forward movement of Jupiter Brihaspati, for these 8 years starting 2025 till 2033. This will impact world population, which means it's going to come down. There will be a lot of catastrophes, a lot of natural calamities, including earthquakes. This particular year, which is 2025-2026 till June 2027, the time when Saturn moves into a watery Rashi, which is basically from the 29th of March 2025 till June 2027, which is a longish arc. This entire period when Saturn will be in a watery Rashi, be prepared for tsunamis and flood-like situations, war on the seafront. It can be clearly seen from this period. Now, let's also see that Saturn and Rahu are making this conjunction in Pisces for 2 months, from 29th March 25 till 31st May 2025. This is the period when leaders can be attacked, and some countries can decide to have a nuclear misadventure. Some reckless nations can decide to have a nuclear misadventure, because this Saturn-Rahu conjunction in Pisces, if we just look at historically what happened when the last time these two planets got conjunct in Pisces, I mean, of course, they got conjunct in when they got conjunct in Leo, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was executed. When they got conjunct in Gemini, and I just discussed that previously, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a bomb was dropped in 1945. British imperialism ended in that particular year as well. Nationalism rose in India. So, time for a major shift, a major change when this happens. But right now, it is just happening for 2 months in the sign of Pisces. When it happened last time in Pisces in 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated. Soviet Russia, along with the Warsaw Pact countries, invaded Czechoslovakia. So many countries will invade some other countries. I mean, that is a clear trend that one can see. And with Saturn, see, Saturn in a watery Rashi is therefore 2.25 years, which is from April 25 till June 27. Saturn and Rahu conjunct is going to happen now for just 2 months, April and May 2025. So, this is the time for misadventure, as I said, nuclear misadventure for some reckless nations. It's very, very clear with this combination. Now, if we look at certain countries very, very specifically. Now, if we look at the chart of Russia, which is 12 June 1990, 13:45 hours, Moscow, Russia, we have a Kanya Lagna horoscope with Mars in Pisces in the 7th house. For Mars to be in the 3rd, 6th or the 12th house or the 7th house, in these 4 houses, Mars will promote war. Because even from the 12th, it will have the 8th aspect on the 7th house, and the 3rd and the 6th. 3rd is looked for neighboring countries, 6th for borders, and 7th is actually looked at for war. It is a major research by my Jyotish Guru K.N. Rao sir, when he has looked at various countries which had an activated 7th house, or planets which were present in the 7th house, or lords of 7th house when their dashas came, whether it be the charts of countries or whether it be the charts of the leaders of those countries, when the dasha or the planet posited in the 7th house or the lord of the 7th, which was obviously under malefic influence, when that dasha came, then the country went to war, either suffered war or waged a war. Whether it be the leader of that country, if the 7th house got activated, one can see war from the leader of that particular country's chart. When India was fighting Pakistan, Indira Gandhi's chart had to be looked at, and it was very clear that the 7th house was activated and she went to war. Yeah, so the leaders of a country, their horoscope affects larger, it affects the lives of a lot of people at a larger scale. That is very clear. Now, coming back to Russia, is 12 June 1990, 13:45 hours, Moscow, Russia, Kanya Lagna chart. And as we see in this chart, Mars is in the 7th house. Mars here is in the 7th house in Pisces. That is a very important point, and please note, Saturn is going to come into this 7th house as the 6th lord and the 5th lord, and will transit over natal Mars. And for April and May, Rahu too will be here. And 5 planets are transiting over this natal Mars from the 29th of March. So expect some major trouble with Russia in April and May. In fact, if you look at the full arc, with Saturn's transit in Pisces on the natal Mars of Russia, the next 2 years, Russia will wage a war like no other. It will be intense and immense and catastrophic in nature. Ukraine was fighting this war with Russia, but if Ukraine did not have the support of the Biden-led government of US, then Ukraine was too small a country to fight a war major like Russia. Now that President Trump is there, the war will see a bit of a lull, but with this particular combination of Saturn moving into the 7th and natal Mars is in the 7th house of Russia, with this combination, this will be an incendiary combination, with Saturn sort of igniting the potential of Mars, the volatile potential of Mars. And with this, we know that Russia is not going to stop at any cost. Something that I have said in the last few years across my podcasts, that the world is only going to be polarized even further, with Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea on one side, and South Korea, US, England, France, Germany on the other side, and Israel also on this side. Now, India will be in a dilemma of sorts, because when the time comes, when Saturn moves into Taurus or in Rohini, India will have to decide whether to side with Israel or whether to side with Russia. But remember, with that sannyas yoga that India has in its horoscope, with Lagna Lord and 10th Lord, together combined in the house of Updesha, India will promote peace. Because if you look at India's horoscope, Mars is not troubling the 3rd, 6th, 7th or the 12th houses. So India is not going to promote war at all. Rather, it would be a peacemaker. And as I've said previously, India would, after 2030, something that my Jyotish Guru has said many a times, will become the spiritual capital of the world. The world will look towards India for guidance, for inner calm, for tranquility, for peace. The seekers will come to India.
And I think it's almost just begun. There is a feeler already.
Yes. Now, with Trump coming in, the Russia-Ukraine war can see a bit of a lull, but I've told you the combinations are incendiary. Nothing will now stop Russia. So, this is going to be like a full-fledged war. And even if the Trump government refuses to support Ukraine, what is the worry is that Europe will now come alongside Ukraine and fight Russia, and that will not augur well for Europe. So from 2025 to 2033, in this entire period of Atichari Brihaspati, Europe will see like the reappearance of the crusades of the Middle Ages. History repeats itself. Karma rebounces. So those crusades of the Middle Ages, they will seek reappearance now. Poland and Hungary will play a very crucial part, not in 2025, but in this entire 8-year arc. They'll play a crucial part in war. Poland and Hungary.
Okay.
Like the starting point of something of sorts. Not that they are major powers or anything, but this needs to be looked at.
Okay.
So England, France, Germany, and the rest of Europe who will now support Ukraine. Because if you look at the chart of Ukraine, this is not a war that Ukraine will ever, even with the support of Europe, will ever win. Russia has the potential of nuking the rest. And so this will start a period, as I said, of misadventure from a nuclear perspective. So if you look at England, you look at France, and you look at Germany, and you look at President Zelensky still thinking that he can wage a war or that he has the support, I think this is false bravado at its best. It's very clear from, I wish President Zelensky had an astrologer. They would have looked at the chart and said, Capricorn Lagna chart with so many planets in the 8th house and Saturn transiting over natal Saturn and Mars in Capricorn, and that's when the war started. From 2020, they started a period which was absolutely futile and which would only cause trouble to the land, to that land.
Okay.
And the period is continuing. It is not that it's stopping, that there is going to be a change, that suddenly Europe will, now support Ukraine. You can see it very clearly in Ukraine's chart that it's like the war started, but this is not going to end. And this is not a wise decision that Ukraine is taking. It's very, very clear from the chart, because even the coming years are showing intense and immense trouble. Now, if you look at England, France and Germany, and you know which side they are, which side of the fence they're at, you know that these are going to be difficult years ahead for these countries as well. England, I've said it, I think in one of your podcasts only, previously, only weak kings are going to reign England now. Only weak kings will be at the helm of the British Empire. So to think that they will be able to change much. See, the moment Rishi Sunak went off the radar, and as soon as the Labour Party gained power, the Labour Party and the monarchy, they can't go hand in hand. The monarchy will be ruled by the Sun and the Mars, and the Labour Party or leftist parties will be ruled by Saturn. Together they will never hit it off well. Either the monarchy will come down or they will sort of, and England still is a monarchy. It's not a democracy. So there's going to be some major trouble there, one can clearly see, and there is an major economic slowdown.
Okay.
I've said this for Iran as well. When a country does not take care of its Shakti, when a country does not take care of its women, that country will go down, which doesn't protect its women, which doesn't protect its Shakti, irrespective. And that marked the chapter where Iran then started, that war with Israel. That was a period where the women were clearly up in arms against the government. They were being picked up, taken into prison. But that's a separate story. But I'm saying, whatever be your country, you can't be not protecting your women, or you can't have laws that don't protect the women of your country.
Right.
France is, when you look at the chart of France, you know that the Agni has gone kshina, has weakened. It's a country now which is, the chart is showing only major debauchery, a very hedonistic lifestyle, and that's what is leading to this misguided intellectualism. So Europe per se, and I'm just looking at England, France and Germany, they are not showing, the charts are not showing a bright future. In this period of Atichari Brihaspati, which is 2025 to 2033, I don't see these as brilliant years for Europe. There will be internal conflict, and of course, siding Ukraine and fighting Russia will not augur well for Europe at all.
Okay.
Now let's look at the chart of China. 1st October 1949, 15:15 hours, Peking, China. This is a Capricorn Makar Lagna chart with Moon in Lagna. I'm only going to look at Saturn, Mars and Rahu. So if you look at Saturn, Mars and Rahu for a certain chart, we will understand what is going to happen starting 2025 with this movement of Pisces, and of course Rahu and Ketu moving on to the Aquarius Leo axis. So in this chart, if we look at Rahu, natal Rahu is in the 3rd house, Mars is in the 7th house of war. Mars is not here merely as a 7th, in the 7th house. It is also aspecting the 7th lord, Moon. Rahu in Pisces, in the natal chart of China in the 3rd house, and Saturn is soon going to transit over natal Rahu. China will soon be troubling its neighboring countries even more and creating further troubles at the borders of its neighboring countries for these 2 years. It's very clear from the chart. See, Saturn in Pisces can mean one thing, but what planet is it transiting over? Because there is a natal promise to the chart. Now, when there is a natal planet in a particular house and a malefic comes and sits on top of that, then it activates that promise.
Okay.
Now for China, Saturn is going to come over natal Rahu in the 3rd house and it will activate the promise of ambush, of troubling other countries on their borders or weakening the borders, because India is surrounded by very many partners across its borders. So weakening, or rather making those borders porous, that is a war strategy that China will try and accomplish.
Okay.
But not very successfully. But it will cause trouble to India for sure, is very, very clear.
So what about calamities and tsunamis and all of that?
See, with Saturn in a watery Rashi, which is for starting April till June 2027, this period will cause trouble because the water element is in imbalance and a malefic planet in this Rashi. Depending on the countries, for certain it might not mean fighting an invasion on the waterfront or on the seafront or tsunamis for every country, but it depends for what horoscope this planet or this particular zodiac sign will come in what house. But it's very clear that the West will see a lot of natural calamity and water-led trouble. Situations like tsunami are going to be or floods, or the hurricanes are going to be common, not just for this year, but as a trend for the whole arc till the end of the decade, and even, almost till the end of the decade. It's going to be very, very troublesome. Something that I have not, this is not my prediction, but again you can say this is an India prediction. India is part of the world. Saints that I have met have said this, and Rao sir's guru also told him this, that both Bombay and Calcutta will see water-led catastrophe. A part of Calcutta and a part of Bombay would submerge into the waters, but the year was never given.
Right.
So believe me, it is not 2025, but it's much later, but parts of these two cities can submerge, more so Bombay than Calcutta.
But what is the time frame for this?
There was no time frame given by the saints. Let me tell you this.
Okay, but from the chart of Mumbai?
But from the chart, let's discuss it and speak on this another time.
Sure.
But one must understand, if one starts building next to the ocean, and thinking that the ocean, the mighty ocean, will never sort of
Conquer.
conquer the land that was its own land, and stay away. That's completely foolish thinking. Yeah, but it might not be great news, but well, I shared this, and yeah.
So it's not only from you, but it's also from so many interviews that I have done, whether it was Meher Baba, the saint who was like an avatar, who made the similar prediction about Mumbai, and somebody else whom I cannot name, I've, heard similar stuff from. And then of course there are some scientists. I believe there is a scientist who wrote a book in 1960s, Indian scientist whose book was published in US in the 1960s, who made similar predictions that after, like that in 2020s, this thing can happen to Mumbai.
So also, if you look at the chart of Pakistan, then the Aries Lagna chart of Pakistan, natal Rahu is in Taurus. Saturn is going to come in Pisces, and with its third drishti affect this natal Rahu, and one knows that trouble has already started brewing there, and trouble will only intensify. My worry is that they will take some. See, Balochistan is going to separate, because I have said it many times, it's very clear the combination that one sees between the 4th and the 6th houses of the horoscope of Pakistan. It shows Bhumi Khand ka tootna. So land will be, so Bangladesh was set up, that was, that was first Pakistan, East and West Pakistan, and then that got separated. Now other pieces of land too will get separated, but that's a combination with the 4th and the 6th. So one knows that pieces of land will move away from Pakistan. That's very clear. And this Saturn now coming into Pisces, affecting the 2nd house, which has natal Rahu, will only aggravate this stance. And this Saturn will also affect the 9th house. Expect a lot of religious intolerance in Pakistan as well. What you saw in Bangladesh appeared on media, appeared on television. What could be going on behind the scenes in Pakistan, you might never know of, but it will be heightened religious intolerance in Pakistan as well. That is very clear from the country. Okay, let's now look at the chart of USA. 4th July 1776, 10:21, 30 hours, Philadelphia, USA. This is a Simha Lagna horoscope. Mars is in the 11th house with the 3rd house of the neighbors, and is aspecting the 7th lord of war, Saturn, and the 6th house of borders. Very, very clear. Now, Saturn is moving into Pisces in this chart. From Pisces, Saturn will aspect natal Saturn in the 2nd house, and both transiting Saturn and natal Mars will aspect the 5th house and the 11th house from Moon, Sagittarius. Even if Trump tries to control war, because he says that, we believe in promoting economic progress, not war. Even if Trump tries to control the situation, but after November 2026, even Trump will fail in his efforts. The way the system will, like a whirlwind, unleash its negativity on the world, Trump will not be able to do much, even being at the helm of affairs as the US president. So there will be weakening in the system, weakening in his powers from November 2026 onwards, and more so from June 2027. That can be seen from this chart. So when people at the helm of affairs create this karmic, sort of Rinanubandhan, then sometimes for generations people have to suffer. But that too is in the divine scheme of things. So here the good thing is that at least Trump will not promote war. But after November 26, one can even see catastrophe, natural calamity, in US. Because all that karma too will somewhere sort of boomerang.
So what kind of catastrophes do you see?
Whether they are hurricanes or earthquakes, they can trouble the United States.
Okay.
And they see the West is anyways seeing an economic downside.
Okay.
That is very, very visible. So yeah, as I said, Saturn in Cancer, which will happen sometime in the middle of the next decade, will show us a new world order. And these 8 years will now lead us on that path. Yeah, it's very clear. Stay in the axis of Dharma. With Atichari Jupiter, that one particular point is very clear. Whatever be your Dharma. Be righteous, that's all. That is the Dharma. Be righteous.
Right.
So if we were to sum these 8 years that we see ahead, it reminds me of Samuel Huntington's book, The Clash of Civilizations. So that is going to be the theme for these next 8 years. Whether we like it or we don't, but well, that's the way it is.
So audience, please note that we don't have any bias towards any country or its ruler. This is clearly astrological horoscopes of countries and probably their leaders that we are looking into and discussing. This is just an astrological discussion. So please note that, don't make it personal and let there not be any hate here, because that's not what we want, right? Even if the predictions are bad or not so good, that's not what we are wishing for. It's just something that is an astrological reading. So take it in the right spirit, and students of astrology can learn about this science. Of course, it's a very ancient Indian science that dates 5,000 years back.
Even beyond that, because in Mahabharata as well, there is a conversation between Karna and Lord Krishna. Karna says, Ketu is in Chitra Nakshatra, Mars is retrograding in Anuradha Nakshatra, and Saturn is going to affect Rohini Nakshatra. And we know with these three combinations, it's very clear that the ruling king will lose. Therefore, I know that the Kauravas will lose the war, Keshava. Madhusudan, the war will be lost. These are the combinations that Karna is giving. Even in Ramayana, there are so many combinations of muhurtas and combinations of war that this is happening. The Akash Lakshana and the planetary positions. So, we are talking of Treta if you are referring to Ramayana.
Right.
Yes, that is as far as we can see the astrological calculations. In Valmiki Ramayana, it is all there, full of astrological calculations. And Valmiki Ramayana also mentions certain muhurtas which are missing right now, which we don't know
Right.
about, because certain texts have gone missing.
Right.
They could be at the Nalanda University, which got burnt and was burning for 6 months. Who knows?
True. And that's why I really salute this tradition of astrology, because it's nothing but the Indian culture at the end of the day, 5,000 years back or 10,000 years back. It was nothing but the Indian culture. And this esoteric science is something that, it's like a blessing to humanity. So it's not about just one piece of land, it's for the entire world. And whether this culture or that culture or, whatever, however you perceive it, it's humanity at the end of the day, and it's knowledge, for the humanity to begin with. So, wonderful session from you again.
Thank you.
So if anybody wants to connect with Maneeza Ahuja, all you do is just type Maneeza Ahuja and search and look up for her. You'll find her. She has online presence. And if you like my astrology podcast and you've still not subscribed, as my records show that a large portion of viewership watches but has not yet subscribed. So you can subscribe to it right now and you will get all my latest updates, because I make sure I only interview the best authentic astrologers from India. And since I understand astrology, I know the difference between the good and the average. So great. And you can like, share, subscribe, comment. Lots of love.